Hello and welcome to Roll Call, brought to you by Roll Club. Roll Club is devoted to celebrating the dynamic jiu-jitsu community worldwide. Find out more at rollclub.ca. For more than 30 years, today's guests have competed in the highest echelons of motorsports, racing anything that had four wheels and a motor, and sometimes not even a motor, racking up an incredible resume of wins and championships along the way. Starting as a standout in the karting and open wheel ranks, Andy Lally made his way to sports cars, forging a legendary career with 3 Grand Am championships, 5 Rolex 24 at Daytona wins, 4 victories in the 6 Hours of the Glen, and wins at Petit Le Mans and the 12 Hours of Sebring. Along his sports car success, he has over 80 starts in NASCAR's top 3 series, and he won the NASCAR Cup Series Rookie of the Year in 2011. Normally, going down the Mulsanne Straight in the middle of the night and drafting around Talladega is like a sufficient adrenaline hit for most people, but Andy Lally is also a world championship street luge racer. So that's where the 4 wheels, no motor part comes in. But germane to our show is the fact that Lally is also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Paul Creighton. It is our absolute pleasure to welcome to the show, Andy Lally.
How are you, man?
Very well. Thank you so much.
Good deal.
So we always like to talk about how folks came to jiu-jitsu. It's not a normal stick and ball sport, not something that you can find in your high school gym, for example. So, how did you come to it, and do you mind sharing your journey with us?
Sure. So I was kind of a scrappy kid from a very young age, and so I was into different kinds of fighting, but like I got my first go-kart when I was 12. So like right away there was this emphasis on racing. And even though as I became sort of my mid-teen years, I was a little bit more of I strayed the path of normality and was kind of a jerk as a kid and was always into stuff some way, shape, or form, and probably could have been a little better behaved. But I was, again, like a lot of people thought I was pretty proficient at being able to defend myself one way or the other. In my senior year of high school in 1993, that was UFC 1. And that was one of the first times that I saw Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in action. And so I knew what it was, but it was in the back of my mind. And my senior year in high school was also the first year that I got a ride in a race car. So I've been racing cars since 1993. And to a point was always a little bit, hesitant on doing anything super crazy to try to stay healthy. I did the street luge stuff. I did the skating stuff. I kind of always in my head thought that I was at like 99% there. But with some form of mixed martial arts or MMA or a combination thereof, whatever, there was this worry because there was a lot of it was unknown. And so I kept an interest in it, had a huge interest in it. A buddy of mine, my buddy Russ, got me into rock climbing, and there was this indoor rock climbing place. And we'd gone maybe 5 or 6 times, and I just wasn't it wasn't really capturing me. Next door was this MMA gym, which was Creighton Mixed Martial Arts in Suwanee, Georgia. And my buddy was late one day, and I just kind of stuck my head in. I was like, "Oh, I'll get a flyer." This was late 2009. It was early 2010, actually. And I'll get a flyer and see what happens, and blah blah blah. And I walked in. My buddy Isaac, he's now my buddy. I've known him now for 15, 16 years, and he comes out. Well, great Miss Martial Arts. Why don't you come in? We've got a beginner class starting. I'm like, nah, it's cool. I just gonna get a flyer. Long story short, that was the very last day that I'd ever walked in that rock climbing place. And I've been going to that training academy since then. And they're a combination, they're primarily focused on jiu-jitsu. Probably 70% of their 65, 70% of their classes are jiu-jitsu classes, but we have a lot of MMA classes as well. So my main focus was both in the beginning. Immediately, like the cerebral portion of the art caught me on the jiu-jitsu side, and like as soon as I started seeing progress on that, like I was 95% jiu-jitsu, and I would round out the MMA. So Yeah, that's where it went from there.
That's awesome. You sort of touched on this, but one of the things that I've always been fascinated when I found out that you were training at all, period, was how would you balance the two? You have a successful professional, professional athlete career in the racing side of things, and I know personally that like I'll wake up some mornings after jujitsu and just be like, I don't want to do anything. So
Mm.
the idea of balancing a pretty intensive hobby with professional athleticism is fascinating. So, were there any tricks or scheduling that you tried to work?
So when I went into jiu-jitsu, I was my primary focus of cardio was mountain biking.
Mm.
So I went into jiu-jitsu with amazing cardio, which was great because as a spazzy white belt, if you can just stay alive through the first half of most of these guys will go crazy and then burn themselves out, and the upper belts will just cook you. And I would find advantages later in the session because I was doing 6 hour solo mountain bike races, team 24-hour races, stuff like that. And so that complement of the jujitsu and the mountain biking was really good as far as like the short-term burst that you would have in a 5, 8, 10 minute round versus a 3 hour mountain bike ride. It was complementary, and both of those things were exercises that you had to think through, which was for me super critical for auto racing because like getting on a stationary bike or a treadmill and just putting an earphone in and zoning out might be good on your cardio side, but like to think through being tired is monstrously beneficial for me. So like when I weigh that stuff, to circle back to your question, because I'm awesome at getting off on tangents. Uh, yeah, you know, I just tried to always keep it at kind of 99%.
Mm.
I would
Yeah.
definitely go hard and have, you know, through the almost 16 years of training, and now even much more. But when I told myself that when I got my black belt, I was going to really shift kind of 80% focus to MMA and do that, and that's what I've been doing primarily for a little over 3 years now. But the I raced Indy with a broken finger. I raced the 12 hours of Sebring with no ACL, completely detached, and probably 30 or 40 different injuries. And it becomes such a passion that you risk your other passions, including the passions that pay the bills. So
Oh, totally. I have people who use their bodies for work, whether they be firefighters or EMS, and they're whenever we take a photo after class, they're like, no, no, just don't. I don't want anyone to know I'm here, kind of thing. And you're like, okay, I understand it. I understand it. I think building off that a little bit more. I've always been fascinated, being someone who grapples, and I work in motorsports as my day job as well. The kind of parallels between the two. They have they're both kind of individual endeavors, that require a degree of myopia and professional selfishness, but they're impossible to perform without a team. Without to be at the highest level of both sports, you need a room around you in jiu-jitsu. You need an incredible team with you in racing, especially on the sports car side with the endurance when you're actually, literally have driving teammates. So I think you touched on this a little bit, but if you want to expand a little bit more on how maybe BJJ influenced or and MMA influenced your racing, and maybe how racing influenced your grappling side, or were they totally siloed? But it doesn't sound like they were. It sounded like some of the mental aspects collaborated.
the my racing career was quite mature at the point that I was starting the jiu-jitsu. So I was starting jiu-jitsu uh, uh, early 2010, let's call it. And uh, so I was quite, I checked a lot of boxes on the auto racing side and was willing to take more risk on the personal side. I There's a lot of times where I've been in really tough situations in the car that I've put myself on the mat and
Mm.
and remembered really tough roles or sparring sessions where you know it would be easy to quit, and being like just getting completely destroyed in a jiu-jitsu session but toughing the thing out, and yeah, against my advice that I give to everybody else, not tapping out to this choke or that choke and just fighting through horrendously uncomfortable situations. And like I've had situations where I was being burned in the car, like the floor, the foot box was like just roasting my feet, and I knew my feet were burning with blisters, and this was going to be a decent recovery from that. And I would put myself in that time period on the mat of like, come on, just 3 more minutes, get through this. And that got me through really tough situations that potentially other people would give up on. So and then when I did on the jiu-jitsu to MMA side, I we have like an inter academy ranking system. This isn't worldwide and stuff, but our academy here we have a white, yellow, blue, green, red, black belts for our MMA stuff. So it's just kind of to mark your progress and whatnot. But when I just trained sporadically, so even though I got to black belt, I was still a white belt on the MMA side, and that comparison actually helped me chill out my MMA learn, to where like I came in as an absolute, they called me one speed when I was starting, because it was like buzzer would ring and I thought this was like, a death match. I thought this would, and I'd go and it would just be flat out. And um I I wouldn't drill properly because I just want to play. I just want to go. And so I wouldn't rep stuff. And so having experienced all that and saw that, there was a, my own case study of me personally, of like what I struggled at to get right, helped me in MMA a little bit. I'm still stubborn and stupid and like to play, but it helped me be a little more mature, a little calmer. Probably the age thing as well. Is another 15. At that time it was maybe 11 or 12 years. You age more than a decade, you get mature. In your head, you get boxed around a little bit, and you learn to try to just get the process right instead of just rushing through everything. So, but that's super that's super relatable to the racing side as well. So all of that stuff, all the positives that you take from any one of these things is big. And you're right, it does take a team. I mean, I was with Magnus Racing for 13 years, and it was a great group of guys. Still is a great group of guys. And on the mats, if it wasn't for how good my teammates were, I wouldn't have gotten to where I'm at. I'm not saying I'm good, but I'm saying that like my level, if I'm here right now, I'd be down here without the amount of really solid teammates that I've got. We've got 300 plus guys on the jiu-jitsu side and 40 something black belts now. And it's the styles, and anybody that trains understands, there's so many different styles, so many different body types, so many different whatever. It's to draw from all of that is just like drawing from good team members.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Pushes you along. Right. And MMA especially is such an interesting, parallel in a way, because, once you add being able to get hit in the face, it definitely, it's just like racing. It's like you come off a sim and you can get hit by a wall, or, there's no longer tires and
right.
Go-kart and things like that. It amplifies it that much more. I do judo as well. And the ability to lose within seconds is so different than jiu-jitsu, where you have this slap bump surfer mentality, and you're like, no, I'm going to lose within 30 seconds. So it's right. A totally different intensive experience. But I do think, to your point, athletes are athletes, and that ability to convey one sport to the other is really fascinating. And I do think just the scope of the different things you've done, and even just the different cars you've raced, from that the adaptability is really fascinating. But after more than 30 years as a driver, you've taken on a new role. So you've switched the driver suit for maybe sometimes an actual suit. I'm not so sure, but
yeah.
And you're now the president of the Trans Am series presented by Pirelli. Trans Am is one of my all-time favorite series. I remember watching Paul Gentilozzi and Tommy Kendall. I drive a Mercury Marauder because Tommy Kendall drove one in a commercial one time, and so I don't need convincing on how great Trans Am is. But how would you sell a grappling fan or an MMA fan or a practitioner on checking out the series? Especially because you guys are coming up north here, just in our area for the Labor Day weekend sprints at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. So maybe what would be your sell to our audience?
For anybody that's checking out Trans Am for the first time, like our TA2 class, which is sort of out, there's Trans Am, which is a class in its own. It's the original Trans Am from 1966. It is what the Pontiac Trans Am was named after. They basically paid us a royalty right for every car that rolled off the production line. So for a little bit of history on that, for people that don't know where that name came from, but this series, the Trans Am series, has been around for a long time. It's high horsepower. Pretty big downforce, pretty big tire. And then the coolest part about it is no driver aids. So unlike what you see in a lot of conventional, high-tech sports car racing, there's 20 settings of traction control and 10 or 15 settings of ABS in wet and dry. This is dry by the seat of your pants and your right foot, and how you put that throttle down and how you modulate those brakes. And our Trans Am cars have upwards of 900 horsepower, which is more than any other big car like that nowadays. TA2 is essentially our feeder series for what is, young hopeful NASCAR champions. It is the only full-time stock car road racing series in North America. So all we do is road courses. It's pretty much it's kind of like a super late model. It's a little over 500 horsepower, straight late model chassis, and a tall sidewall tire, four-speed pattern. It's the exact gearbox that's in a truck or an Xfinity car, and similar to what they're going to be supporting up there, which is the Pinty series. Is it still called Pinty's? Is that bad on me?
NASCAR Canada series now.
NASCAR Canada series. Sorry. So it's super similar in that way. So for me, it's the TA2 series is stock car road racing, which was my most fun kind of racing when I was racing. When I could guest into a sub role for Xfinity races or Cup races on the road courses, that's where I had my most fun, because you take all the electronic aids out and you have a tire that's going to fall off like 2 or 3 seconds over a half hour, 45-minute run. And that makes driving it so important. It's not just a robot behind the wheel standing on the gas and perfect brakes and great acceleration and whatnot. You've got to drive it every lap. So when you implement that into your series, the racing becomes wild. Absolutely wild. These guys beat each other up, and it's insane moves, and they're slipping and sliding all over the place, 2-3 wide. At CTMP, I've been going there for 30 years now. So 1995 was my first year there. It's amazing what they've done with the place since then. But with Ron Fellows and all the people running that show now, it's still one of the greatest tracks that we go to, one of the most challenging tracks. They took a very dangerous track and they made it a lot safer, which it'd be nice if some other tracks in North America would do the same exact thing. But it's a gutsy track, super fast. You've got one tight corner and then a bunch of really fast sweepers. And when you put these cars into that mix, the racing's wild.
That's awesome. And the proof's really in the pudding with, guys like Brent Cruz and Connor Zillage coming from TA2 and just absolutely, destroying the NASCAR, every NASCAR series they enter, seemingly just absolutely dominating. So again, that's the Labor Day weekend sprints at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Trans Am will be on the Saturday, I believe, is your feature race, and the NASCAR Canada series on the Sunday. So definitely check it out, fans, if you want to basically see, some of the best shoulder to shoulder, muscular road racing around it. It's there. And Andy, if you've got a couple seconds, we'll do a quick rapid fire yes, no questions, or however much you want to answer to these ones. And these will be a little bit more grappling related.
Sure.
So we ask everybody these questions, and I actually don't know which way you're going to go on the first one, but gi or no gi?
No gi.
No gi. I thought maybe with the MMA. So
yeah. I've gone back and forth, but as I get old and I've got wrist injuries and crinkly fingers and messed up knees, I like less things to get hung up on.
Totally. Points or submission only?
Submission only.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Points. Points really try competition for me. I don't want to think about points because I honestly I play from bottom side a lot.
Okay.
And I had a knee surgery. I know this is supposed to be rapid fire, but I've had 3 knee surgeries. my first knee surgery, they told me I didn't need to take 9 months off. I took about 8 or 9 weeks off of, and I went back and I would lay on my back. I'm like, don't submit the leg, don't go after the knee, attack, waist up. And I would start in a bad position, bottom side, and I learned awesome attacks from down there.
Yeah. My lineage is actually Gordo. So Gordo's sort of not invented, but revolutionized the half guard for the exact same reason. He hurt his knee, and to that point, if you play points, you kind of have to play a strange game, that evolves around it. So I totally understand that. I can be interested. It doesn't have to be your professor or anything like that, but most influential person on your grappling.
Man, there's a bunch. Like I said, we're up to, when I joined Creighton Mixed Martial Arts, there were 0 black belts yet. Very soon after, maybe a year and a half, he promoted his first 3. But Paul Creighton, and then one of my closest training buddies, Isaac Eberly, awesome. out of there too. Great guys. But we've got so many solid guys that I train with. That, I mean, I'd be remiss because I'd name 20 and then I'd insult 20 others for not naming them.
That's awesome. So if they took one submission out of your toolkit, what's the one that you'd just be so bummed? The one that you can't live without, they'd be bummed.
Kimuras.
Yeah.
Okay. I Kimura the hell out of everybody. I start Kimura and transition to lots of other things from Kimuras.
So versatile, right? I started in a catch wrestling background, and it's double wrist lock and catch wrestling, and it would just be like, just grab it anywhere. And I was like, yeah, of course.
Honestly, I mean, literally top, bottom, side, I'm all over the place on the Kimura side of things.
That's awesome. Yeah. And then last one, if you've got a big super fight plan, dream scenario, you're at Madison Square Garden or wherever, and one band could play you out to the ring or into the cage, what would it be?
It's easy. 5-finger death punch. My buddy awesome. Joe is a black belt in Zoltan Balthroy, who's the lead guitarist and the co-founder of 5-Finger Death Punch, is also a black belt in judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Nice. And they bring mats on the road with them. So last time, and he's in the cars, he's a big car guy. Last time he was in Atlanta, they were Megadeth was opening for them, and Dave is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, was last time he was there. We're backstage, we've got mats down there, and we're rolling like 2 hours before the show. They do that just to warm up. It was so cool. So
that's super cool.
5-Finger Death Punch for sure.
I think you might win the most interesting answer for that one so far. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Andy. And just last thing, where can folks find yourself in the Trans Am series?
So Go Trans Am is the Instagram account, Twitter account, probably Facebook account. I'm Andy Lally Racing on Instagram. That's the best place to find me, and would love to hear from any of the fans listening here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, and talk soon.
Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.